I think this topic is great, and what I hope to do today is give you some insights on how I developed a computerized ECG algorithm using the 12SL software or MUSE, and hopefully give some insights to you on how this process can be repeated. So this is my objective today. I want to showcase how I use GE Healthcare's MUSE system to enable AI research and create high-value, practical ECG algorithms. Here are my disclosures. Here is a disclaimer from GE Healthcare. And now, here are my real disclosures. I want to diagnose ventricular tachycardia, or VT, without looking. This has been a goal and motivation of mine for several years. And it's been an inspiration for most of my work in this research. I also want to end the era of manual wide complex tachycardia differentiation algorithms. It's nothing personal. I like these algorithms, but in my view, the time is up. I think we need to move on to bigger and better things. Though I generally like these algorithms a lot, I teach it all the time, I think we need to move on to the next era of diagnostic electrocardiography. So wide complex tachycardia, what is it? Well, it's a rapid and fast rhythm. Essentially, it can be boiled down to greater than 100 beats per minute with a wide QRS greater than 120 milliseconds. Now, wide complex tachycardia differentiation is ultimately boiled down to this. Is it VT or is it supraventricular wide complex tachycardia? In other words, can you tell the difference between this ECG and this ECG? So why is this important? What are the clinical implications of this question? The successful differentiation of wide complex tachycardias into VT or SWCT has undeniable, important therapeutic and prognostic implications. On one hand, accurate VT and SWCT diagnoses can lead to appropriate, high quality, and cost-effective patient care. So you have two roads that you can go down. And the clinical implications include immediate treatment decisions. Do you receive drug A or do you receive drug B? Care triage, are you going to admit this patient to the ICU or are you in fact going to send them home? Diagnostic testing, are they going to get a cardiac MRI, EP study, maybe a cardiac cath? And also, likewise with invasive procedures, are you going to put an ICD in this patient? Very important clinical questions. And what happens if you get things wrong? Well, what about an actual VT misclassified as an SWCT? So this is definitely the most feared complication that we have in terms of wide complex tachycardias, and it can easily lead to medication administration that results in hemodynamic collapse of the patient. And basically, that's what I would categorize as a disaster. And it actually could be a disaster that leads to an unnecessary error that actually takes the life of a patient. Now, what about an actual SWCT misclassified as a VT? Well, it's not as bad. However, it can lead to wrong, aggressive, and expensive treatments, including inappropriate shocks, inappropriate ICD implantations, invasive procedures, increased healthcare costs, and also increased psychological stress on our patients. So, with that in mind, it's understandable why this topic has been a focus of researchers and many of the greats in electrophysiology for greater than 50 years. Now, with that, we have developed, as a whole, a sundry of manual algorithms to help with this diagnostic question. Work by greats like Hein Wellens, the Brigada brothers, Griffith, Jasper Zetsky. We have many algorithms at our disposal, and they're all great, in my view. And these algorithms have a few common themes. So they require visual inspection of the 12-lead ECG. They require manual application of specific criteria that you might know, you might not know. And then also they arrive at an absolute classification of what the diagnosis is. So now that we have a billion algorithms out there, problem solved, right? Or we don't necessarily have to worry about anything else. Well, That's not exactly the case. Unfortunately, when manual algorithms are appraised on different ECGs by different persons in separate validation studies, they don't perform the same. This problem sort of reminds me of overfitting with machine learning algorithms. There's a lot of data from external validation studies out there, but the key takeaways are this. So they have modest overall accuracy, relatively good sensitivity but weak specificity, and overall a limited impact on post-test VT probability. And as a result, they have trouble actually ruling in and ruling out ventricular tachycardia. So in general, they fail to accomplish the set purpose of the algorithm to a major extent. But there's actually more. There's additional drawbacks. Most of these algorithms are, by their very nature, not automatable. They're difficult and time-consuming to apply in some cases. When individuals apply it, there is poor inter-observer agreement, and they're not necessarily tested on real-world populations. Mostly, lab-based studies performed by experts. So it's also a matter of practicality. Now, I wish wide complex tachycardia differentiation was this simple, but it's not. In reality, it's more like a learning curve. Wide complex tachycardia is a very complex scale, and with every complex scale, there is going to be a learning curve. Now, the sad thing is that most clinicians are at the very beginning of this learning curve. And the truth is actually ending up to be more like this. An ever-increasing minority of clinicians are actually capable of differentiating wide complex tachycardias in clinical practice. It's also a matter of limited applicability. So in addition to manual algorithms being studied on 12-lead ECGs, we really don't have much else to speak of. These algorithms were not tested and developed on remote monitoring devices or systems like cardiac telemetry. So I think it's clear we need new methods. And a lofty goal is that we need new methods that are highly accurate, with high sensitivity and specificity for ventricular tachycardia, and overall just better than the manual algorithms. We also need algorithms that are simple to use, meaning that anybody can use it. In other words, it has to be automated. And then we need algorithms that are widely applicable and generalizable, usable on any recorded ECG and all ECG products. So we're also looking for something that's high value. So increased benefits and decreased costs. Put that in a ratio, we can get something that's high value. And how that would look like is something that is high diagnostic accuracy, high flagging capabilities, strong prediction capacity, strong diagnostic adjunct capacity, and broad applicability. All the while decreasing interpretation, resources for diagnosis, time to diagnosis, need for expert consultation, and need for additional diagnostics. So where is the solution? Well, I think the solution can come from GE Healthcare, and I think it can come from its existing 12SL platform, or MUSE. And specifically, I think it could come from computerized ECG measurements already processed by the MUSE software. No need to create something new, just need to use what is already out there and simply pick at the low-lying fruit. And it was good news to me as a researcher to learn that MUSE measures everything. So they seemingly anything that you would want to have precisely measured and quantified, this system, by and large, already does it. So it was also good news for me to learn as a researcher that I could access this information. All I needed to do was use the database functionality of MUSE, and I could access the ECGs that I desired, and also the measurements that I wanted. And then I could plug these measurements into a very familiar data reservoir. And then with computerized data leveraged by AI, I could simply make models. So I can take data from a baseline 12-lead ECG, but also the wide complex tachycardia, and then I could arrive at a prediction. And I could use that modeling structure, and I could use different machine learning models such as support vector machines, fully connected neural networks, random forests, k-nearest neighbors to accomplish the desired task. But I didn't use just measurements. I also developed novel features. So what I brought into the paradigm was heavy study in the subject matter of interest, high exposure and analysis of wide complex tachycardia tracings, critical thinking on how best to distinguish VT and SWCT, and you can arrive at some pretty good ideas, which I've now come to appreciate is simply just a reflection of what the underlying electrophysiologic truth is or basis of the new parameter. So leveraging the physiology or the truth or the reality. So what we did was create novel features through a process called feature engineering. Some of the ideas are shown above, all of which have a foundation or ground truth in electrophysiologic principles. I don't really have time to discuss these parameters in detail, but based off these ideas, we formulated novel features. We then put these novel features into models, not just raw measurements. So this is how it works. So for model development, we started with MUSE software data measurements. We chose the measurements that we liked. We developed the features that we liked. We put these features into machine learning model architectures, and then we ultimately selected the best performing models for implementation. So you might be asking me this question. So I did not use deep learning, correct? I used feature engineering. I used feature engineering on a powerful, existing, and widely available platform. That's the 12SL software, a platform that includes this information and the processes that I already need. The approach that I took was to improve upon something that's already good, not replace it, a process that I find to be more practical and immediately useful. And I repeated this process over and over and over again. And lo and behold, we developed many models, each of which with strong wide complex tachycardia differentiation capabilities. This was from our original paper. This is multiple different studies, multiple different models that we developed, all of which were capable of achieving the desired task at hand. Now, we also went on to test these algorithms in what we affectionately call the man versus machine trial. And we published this about 6 months ago in Circulation EP. And in this trial, we compared manual ECG interpretation methods, some of the most popular, including the Brugada algorithm, the Recchi-AVR algorithm, the newer VT score. And we also had these algorithms applied by 2 electrophysiologists. And then we compared it directly to the performance of our automated wide complex tachycardia differentiation methods. So we started with 220 wide complex tachycardia ECGs. We had 2 pathways, and we essentially compared their diagnostic performance. And what we learned is that automated methods outperformed manual methods. And this is a chart of showing the overall accuracy comparison between the 2. So now that we're, or at least getting closer to accomplishing these goals, what should we do now? I think the next step is performing what is a prospective study, a randomized control study, where we compare the performance with and without these algorithms. And we would like to do this approach on a virtual platform similar to what we've done in what is called the Educate trial. And this is how it would look. We'd present the 12-lead ECG, and we'd ask our participants that are randomized to interpret this with and without the automated algorithm, and then we can directly compare their performance. And then thereafter, if that goes well, I think it's simply a question of how many people we wish to help with these algorithms. We certainly can put this into the 12SL software, but there's other opportunities in stress testing. There's also remote monitoring devices that could be utilized, and then also telemetry systems, that would be a big deal, and then also even AADs. Now, the reason I think we could do that in a more immediate sense is because we're leveraging the ground truth or the underlying electrophysiologic basis to formulate these algorithms. So it's more transferable from one modality to the other. Now, if we were to go about and do that, which would be a pretty big task, you need to be very clear about what who you're helping here. I think it would help ER doctors perform a very complex task. ICU physicians for managing high acuity patients, doctors with unrelated clinical expertise, not having much exposure to ECG training, and then also brand new trainees, and I at my institution have a lot of them. But I would even say that it would even help the people that are very good at 12-lead ECG reading, because it would help relieve some of the burden of responsibility for this complicated task. And then, of course, what it really should be all about is giving good tools to establish high-quality, cost-effective care to a patient and their loved ones. Thank you very much.